There comes a time in life when the wounds inflicted by others weigh so heavily on your soul that you wonder if justice will ever find its way to your doorstep. You gave kindness, and in return you received cruelty. You offered love, and they repaid you with indifference. You sacrificed, but they only took more. And now, as the years pass, you wonder, will their actions ever return to them? Will the hands that harmed you tremble in regret? It is written, "Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that will he also reap." Galatians 6:7. Yet as you sit with the remnants of your past, watching the ones who wounded you continue with their lives, you may begin to doubt. Why does it seem like they flourish while you still carry the scars of their betrayal? Why does it feel as though justice has been delayed, as though your suffering has been forgotten? But listen closely. Time has a way of restoring what was lost, and age has a way of revealing what was hidden. The world may have forgotten your pain, but heaven has not. There is a divine law at work, one that cannot be evaded, no matter how much the wicked may believe they are above it. The seeds of pain they planted in your life did not disappear. They were buried in the soil of time, waiting for the day when the harvest would come. And it will come. God sees everything. The God who formed you in the secret place, Psalm 139 verse 15, has not turned away from your suffering. He has counted every tear you have shed in the silence of your nights. He has seen every betrayal, every humiliation, every false accusation hurled against you. The Lord declares, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay." Romans 12:19. Do you believe that? Do you trust that He will repay, that He will bring justice in His time? Sometimes the hardest thing to do is to remain patient when you know you have been wronged. Your heart cries out for fairness, for the tables to turn, for those who mocked you to taste the bitterness they forced you to drink. But God reminds us in Psalm 37:7, "Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. Their success is temporary. Their prosperity is fleeting. They may believe they have won, that their cruelty will never come back to haunt them. But the Lord does not forget. When they struck you down, they struck against the Lord's anointed." 1 Samuel 26:9. When they trampled on your dignity, they offended the one who fights for you. Time will reveal the truth. The years ahead will unfold like a great revelation. Those who built their lives on deception and cruelty will find that time is not kind to the deceitful. Their youth may have shielded them, but age will not be so merciful. When they once walked with arrogance, they will now tread with regret. Where they once had companionship, they will now have emptiness. And you? Your old age will not be a curse but a blessing. The trials you endured will not have been for nothing. They refined you. They prepared you for something greater. Ecclesiastes 3:01 reminds us, "To everything there is a season, and a time for every purpose under heaven." If you have suffered in silence, know this: your season of restoration is coming. Those who abandoned you in your weakness will look for you in their own frailty and find that you have risen beyond their reach. Have you ever seen a mighty tree in the middle of a storm? It bends, it sways, but it does not break. Why? Because its roots are deep. The storms of life have shaken you, but they have also strengthened you. Your suffering was not meaningless. It was shaping you for a future where you would stand tall, while those who mocked you would wither away. The Lord will lift you up. When you were weeping in solitude, they laughed in their arrogance. When you were burdened by sorrow, they reveled in their own pleasure. But now the seasons are shifting. The tables are turning. The same God who raised Joseph from the pit to the palace, Genesis 41, 43, 63, who exalted David from a shepherd boy to a king, Samuel 16:13, will raise you up. Your suffering was never the end of your story. It was only the beginning of a divine setup for your elevation. Psalm 23:05 declares, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows." That is your destiny. They will witness your blessing, but will not partake in it. They will reach for the very things they once despised in you, your kindness, your wisdom, your strength, and they will find nothing. Time humbles the proud. It strips away illusions and forces one to face reality. And the reality is this: those who build their lives on the suffering of others will eventually live to see that suffering become their own. No wealth, no power, no charm can shield them from the emptiness they have created. When the distractions fade, when the crowd disappears, when the applause stops, what will they have left but you? Your path is different. You will not enter your old age with bitterness, but with peace. The kindness they took for granted will return to you in ways you never expected. The love they rejected will surround you, not from them, but from those God will place in your life. The laughter they once stole from you will be restored, richer and deeper than before. Your suffering was not in vain, it was a preparation. And your reward is coming. The hands that hurt you will tremble with regret, and the heart that endured will rejoice in restoration. The end of your story will not be like theirs. Now, let's look at the signs of toxic relationships, the very patterns that reveal who they were and why their future will be empty. They take without giving. There is a certain kind of person who moves through life like a bottomless pit, consuming everything in their path, yet never feeling full. These are the ones who take and take, but never once consider giving in return. Their presence drains you, their needs consume you, and their desires always come before yours. You give them your time, your love, your energy, yet it never seems to be enough. No matter how much you pour into them, they always leave you feeling empty. The Bible warns us about such people. Proverbs 30:15 speaks of the leech, saying, "The leech has two daughters, give and give. 3 things are never satisfied, 4 never say enough." This is the nature of those who take without giving. They are never satisfied. They latch on to you, feeding off your kindness, your patience, your sacrifices, but they never once stop to ask themselves if they are draining you dry. You may have noticed how they demanded your loyalty while offering none in return. You stood by them through their struggles, encouraged them in their weakest moments, carried their burdens when no one else would. But when it was your turn to be held up, when you were the one in need, they disappeared. When you cried out for help, they had no time for you. They took advantage of your goodness, but they never intended to return it. Such people do not operate on the principles of love, but of self-interest. Love, according to 1 Corinthians 13:05, does not seek its own. True love gives freely, expecting nothing in return. But these people, whether they were friends, family, or even a spouse, never loved in the way that God intended. They loved only as long as it served their own needs. They loved for what they could gain, not for what they could give. And you were the one who paid the price. You gave because it was in your nature to give. You sacrificed because that is who you are. But over time you began to notice the imbalance. You began to feel the weight of always being the one who cared more, who tried harder, who forgave first. You started to wonder, if you stopped giving, would they even stay? If you had nothing left to offer, would they still want to be in your life? This is the painful truth about those who take without giving. Their love is conditional, transactional. As long as you keep pouring into them, they will remain. But the moment you are empty, the moment you have nothing left to give, they will move on to their next source. This is why so many people who have suffered at the hands of such individuals look back and realize they were never truly loved, they were only used. The danger of such relationships is not just the exhaustion they bring, but the way they distort your understanding of love. When you spend enough time with someone who only takes, you begin to believe that this is what love looks like. One person giving everything while the other merely receives. But this is not love. This is exploitation. And God did not create you to be used. In Luke 6:38, Jesus says, "Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap." This is the principle of divine reciprocity. When you give in the right places, when you invest your love in people who value it, you will receive back more than you gave. But those who only take from you are not aligned with this principle. They live by a different law, one of greed and selfishness, and in the end, they will reap what they have sown. For a time, it may seem as if they are the ones who won. They drained you and walked away as if nothing happened. They left you broken while they continued on without a second thought. But God is not blind to such things. In the end, those who take without giving will find themselves empty, while those who gave with a pure heart will be filled beyond measure. They manipulate and deceive. Deception is a quiet poison. It does not strike like a sudden wound. Rather, it seeps into the soul, twisting reality until truth becomes unrecognizable. Those who manipulate and deceive do not always come with visible weapons. They come with words, with carefully crafted lies, with gestures that seem sincere but are filled with hidden intentions. They do not attack outright. Instead, they distort, they mislead, they reshape the truth to serve their own desires. The Bible warns about such people. In Jeremiah 9:8 it is written, "Their tongue is a deadly arrow, it speaks deceitfully. With their mouths they all speak cordially to their neighbors, but in their hearts they set traps for them." These are the ones who smile while betraying you, who offer words of comfort while planning your downfall. They know how to say the right things, how to present themselves as trustworthy, but beneath their mask lies only selfish ambition. Perhaps you have encountered such individuals, people who convinced you they were on your side, who made you believe that their loyalty was true. But over time, the inconsistencies began to show. Their words did not align with their actions. They said they cared, yet their behavior spoke otherwise. They made promises, but their follow-through was always missing. They manipulated situations to their advantage, turning people against you while pretending to be innocent. And when you finally confronted them with the truth, they twisted the narrative, making you feel as though you were the one at fault. This is how deception works. It creates confusion. It makes you doubt yourself. It forces you into a position where you question your own perception, where you start wondering if you are imagining things. A manipulator knows how to gaslight, how to subtly shift blame, how to turn their wrongdoings into your responsibility. Ephesians 5:6 warns us, "Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of such things God's wrath comes on those who are disobedient." Their words may be persuasive, their arguments may sound logical, but truth is not in them. They speak only to gain an advantage, to control the situation, to shape events in their favor. And the most dangerous part, they believe their own lies. They have lied for so long that they have convinced themselves they are righteous. Such people are not merely dishonest, they are dangerous. They do not just take advantage of your trust, they destroy your ability to trust altogether. When you have been manipulated enough times, when you have been deceived repeatedly by someone you once loved or respected, you begin to see the world differently. You start questioning everyone's motives. You hesitate before believing anything. Your heart once open and full of warmth, begins to close. The damage left behind by a deceiver is not just about the betrayal itself. It is about the way it changes you. It plants seeds of doubt in your heart, making you cautious where you were once free. And this is precisely what they wanted. A manipulator does not want you strong. They do not want you confident. They want you in a state of uncertainty so that they can continue to control you. But God is not deceived by their actions. Galatians 6:7 reminds us, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows." Though they may have convinced others of their innocence, though they may have painted you as the villain while they played the victim, their deception will not last forever. The truth, no matter how deeply buried, will always rise. Lies may spread quickly, but truth is like a seed. It takes time, but once it grows, it cannot be ignored. For now they may feel triumphant. They may believe that their manipulations have worked, that they have escaped accountability. But no one deceives forever. A web of lies will eventually collapse under its own weight. The very tricks they used against others will one day ensnare them. They mock your pain. There is a cruelty in this world that cuts deeper than betrayal, and that is the mockery of suffering. To be wounded is one thing, to be laughed at for your wounds is another. Some people do not merely hurt you, they find amusement in your pain. They watch your struggles, not with sympathy, but with satisfaction. They see your hardships as a spectacle, your misfortunes as entertainment. And when you turn to them for comfort, they meet you with scorn instead of kindness. The Bible warns us about those who mock the suffering of others. Proverbs 17:5 declares, "Whoever mocks the poor shows contempt for their Maker. Whoever gloats over disaster will not go unpunished." Understand this: your suffering is not unnoticed by heaven. The God who created you does not stand idly by when his children are ridiculed. To mock the broken-hearted is to mock the one who formed them. And though it may seem as if such people face no consequences, the word assures us that justice is coming. Perhaps you have encountered those who laughed at your pain. When you were struggling, they did not offer a helping hand, they whispered behind your back. When you were at your lowest, they did not lift you up. They spread rumors about you, exaggerating your failures, making a mockery of your suffering. They acted as though your hardships were a joke, as though your struggles were something to be laughed at rather than understood. Job, a man who endured immense suffering, experienced this very betrayal. In Job 12:04 he lamented, "I have become a laughingstock to my friends, though I called on God and he answered, a mere laughingstock, though righteous and blameless." Even though Job was a man of integrity, his so-called friends mocked him instead of standing by him. They assumed his suffering was his own fault. They did not offer encouragement, they only deepened his wounds. And isn't that how it happens? The ones who should be offering support are often the first to tear you down. Instead of standing with you, they point fingers. Instead of comforting you, they ridicule. They use your hardships as an opportunity to elevate themselves, to make themselves feel superior. But in reality, their laughter does not stem from strength, it comes from weakness. A truly strong person does not need to belittle others. Only those who are empty inside take pleasure in the suffering of others. Psalm 35:15 describes these people well, but when I stumbled, they gathered in glee. Attackers gathered against me when I was unaware. They slandered me without ceasing. Like the ungodly, they maliciously mocked. They gnashed their teeth at me. It is in the nature of the wicked to mock the righteous when they are down. They delight in seeing you struggle because deep inside, they fear what you are capable of when you rise. This is why they laugh. They do not believe in your restoration. They assume that your suffering is permanent. They think that your setbacks are the end of your story, but what they fail to understand is that God has the final say. The pain they mocked the tears they dismissed, the hardships they found amusing. These are the very things God will use to lift you up. Mockery does not break those who are favored by God. It only sets the stage for their comeback. Those who ridicule the suffering of others are blind to a simple truth. The same God who allows trials also brings restoration. And when that restoration comes, those who once mocked will have no laughter left. The very people who ridiculed your pain will watch as you rise beyond what they ever imagined. They abandon you in your weakest moments. Nothing reveals a person's true nature like the moment when you are at your lowest. When you are strong, when you are providing, when you have something to offer, people gather around you. They enjoy your presence. They take from your kindness, and they stand close when things are going well. But the moment hardship strikes, the moment you need them the most, they disappear. It is written in Proverbs 19:7, "The poor are shunned by all their relatives. How much more do their friends avoid them? Though they pursue them with pleading, they are nowhere to be found." This is the nature of those who abandon you. They were never there because of love. They were there for convenience. They benefited from your strength, but they were never willing to support you in your weakness. Maybe you had friends or family who were always by your side when you were doing well. They enjoyed your company when you were successful, but when you faced financial struggles, they no longer had time for you. Maybe you had people in your life who claimed to care about you, but when you got sick, when you lost your job, when you fell into difficulty, they disappeared as if you never existed. Jesus himself experienced this kind of betrayal. On the night he was arrested, after years of teaching, healing, and loving his disciples, what happened? They scattered. The very people who swore their loyalty, the ones who said they would never leave him, were gone the moment danger arrived. Peter, the disciple who boldly declared, "Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you," Matthew 26:35, denied him 3 times when the pressure was on, and the rest? They fled in fear. How many people in your life made promises to stand by you, only to abandon you when you needed them most? How many people said they would always be there, but when the storms of life came, they were nowhere to be found? It is painful to realize that some people only stay when the road is smooth, but the moment it becomes rocky, they vanish. Psalm 41:9 says, "Even my close friend, someone I trusted, one who shared my bread, has turned against me." The ones you trusted, the ones you believed in, the ones you sacrificed for, these are often the ones who hurt the most when they walk away. Not because you depended on them, but because you believed their love was real. But their abandonment was not your failure, it was their exposure. A weak moment in your life revealed the truth about their character. God allowed the hardship not to break you, but to show you who was truly meant to be in your life. Because people who walk away in your weakness were never meant to stay in your strength. Joseph, a man favored by God, was abandoned by his own brothers. They threw him into a pit, left him to be sold as a slave, and walked away from his life as if he never mattered. Yet, years later, when they were in need, they had to come back to the very one they betrayed. Genesis 42:6-7. Those who leave you in your weakest moment often find themselves needing you when their own struggles arise. You see, abandonment is not always a loss. It is often a form of divine protection. When God is taking you to a higher place, He allows certain people to leave so that they do not have access to your blessing. Those who walked away when you were weak were never meant to be there when God raises you up. And when that time comes, they will see that their absence did not destroy you. It only prepared you for something greater. They exploit your kindness. Kindness is one of the most beautiful gifts a person can offer. It is a reflection of God's own nature, a light in a world filled with selfishness and cruelty. When you love, when you give, when you show mercy, you are not acting out of weakness. You are demonstrating a strength that comes from a heart aligned with God. But there are those who do not see kindness as something sacred. They see it as an opportunity, a resource, a weakness to be exploited. The Bible warns us about such people. In Matthew 7:6, Jesus says, "Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces." This is the nature of those who take advantage of kindness. They do not value it, they do not cherish it. Instead, they use it for their own gain, and when it no longer benefits them, they discard it as if it were nothing. Perhaps you have experienced this. You were always the one who gave. You were the one who listened, who cared, who sacrificed. You went out of your way to help them, to make sure they were okay, to be the friend, the sibling, the spouse, or the support they needed. But over time, you began to realize that it was never reciprocated. They only came to you when they needed something. They only showed affection when they had something to gain, and the moment you needed even a fraction of what you gave, they were suddenly too busy, too distant, or uninterested. It is written in Proverbs 25:21-22, "If your enemy is hungry, give him food to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you." God sees your kindness. He sees how you continued to love even when you were being used. He sees how you forgave even when they did not deserve it. And He assures you that their actions will not go unnoticed. But here is the truth about people who exploit kindness. They do not understand the cost of what they are wasting. They believe that kindness is endless, that you will always be there, that you will always forgive, that you will always give them another chance. They mistake patience for passivity. They assume that because you have not retaliated, you never will. But what they fail to realize is that even God's patience has a limit. We see this in the story of Samson and Delilah. Samson loved Delilah, and he trusted her. But Delilah was not interested in his love. She was interested in what she could gain from him. She exploited his trust, his affection, and his kindness for her own advantage. And in the end, when she had taken everything from him, she left him in the hands of his enemies. Judges 16:18-21. This is the danger of those who misuse love. They will take until there is nothing left, and then they will walk away without a second thought. And yet the kindness you gave was never wasted. Though they may have treated it as something disposable, God sees what they could not. He sees the love you gave, the sacrifices you made, the patience you extended. And while they walked away believing they got the better of you, what they do not understand is that kindness is never a loss. Those who misuse it may think they have won, but in reality they have only ensured their own emptiness. Because the one who exploits kindness will one day stand in need of it and find that there is no one left to give it to them. They live for themselves. Selfishness is one of the greatest destroyers of relationships. When a person lives only for themselves, when their desires, needs, and ambitions are the only things that matter to them, they become incapable of true love. Love requires sacrifice. It requires giving, serving, and thinking beyond oneself. But those who live for themselves do not understand this. They take, they demand, they expect, but they never consider what they owe in return. The Bible warns about such people in 2 Timothy 3:024. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of the good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. These are the ones who prioritize their own desires above everything else, including the people who love them. Their choices are driven by self-interest, and if anyone gets hurt in the process, they feel no remorse. Perhaps you have known people like this. People who expect you to be there for them, but are never there for you. People who make promises they do not keep because keeping their word would require inconvenience. People who demand your loyalty but show no loyalty in return. They live as if the world exists to serve them, as if your love, time, and sacrifices are things they are entitled to rather than gifts they should cherish. You have seen how they operate. When things are good, they are present. When there is something to gain, they show up. But the moment the relationship requires effort, when it is no longer about their needs but about yours, they disappear. They do not want to invest, they do not want to sacrifice, and they certainly do not want to be held accountable for their actions. They want the benefits of love without the responsibility that comes with it. Selfish people manipulate others into believing that they care, but their actions always reveal the truth. They will say what you want to hear, but their behavior will never match their words. They will apologize when confronted, but their apologies mean nothing because they never change. They will promise to be better, to do better, but when given the chance, they go right back to prioritizing themselves above everything else. In Philippians 2:03-04, we are reminded of the opposite of selfishness. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. Love is about looking beyond yourself. It is about valuing people, cherishing their presence, and understanding that relationships are built on mutual care. But selfish people do not think this way. They believe love is about what they can receive, not what they can give. They make you feel as though your needs are a burden. The moment you express that you need something from them, they act as if you are being unreasonable. They make you feel guilty for asking for the same effort, attention, or care that you have given them without question. They create a one-sided dynamic where they take and you give, and they justify it by making you believe that this is just the way things are. But the truth is, this is not love. This is control. Jesus himself gave us the greatest example of selflessness. He did not live for himself, though he had every right to. Instead, he lived to serve, to give, to lay down his life for others. In John 15:13, he said, "Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friend." True love is about sacrifice, about putting others before yourself. But selfish people reject this truth. They will never lay anything down for you because they do not see you as someone worth sacrificing for. You may have spent years giving, hoping, waiting for them to change. But selfishness is not something that disappears overnight. It is a mindset, a lifestyle, a deeply ingrained way of thinking. A selfish person will not wake up one day and suddenly decide to be selfless. They will only change if they are forced to face the consequences of their actions. But even then, many of them will simply find someone else to exploit, someone else to drain, someone else to serve their endless need for attention and validation. Ecclesiastes 5:10 says, "Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income." This too is meaningless. Selfish people are never satisfied. No matter how much they take, it is never enough. No matter how much love they receive, they still crave more. They are driven by a hunger that can never be filled because their lives are built on themselves rather than on something greater. You have seen how they operate. You have watched them prioritize their pleasure over your pain, their convenience over your well-being, their desires over your needs. And every time you needed them to step outside of themselves, to think beyond their own wants, they failed you. Not because they could not do it, but because they never wanted to. Because, in their world, the only person who truly matters is them. They refuse to change. One of the most frustrating experiences in life is witnessing someone you care about continuously walk down a destructive path, refusing to acknowledge the damage they are causing. No matter how many warnings they receive, no matter how many second chances they are given, They persist in their ways. They hurt others, manipulate, deceive, and justify their actions, never pausing to reflect on the consequences of their behavior. They are given opportunities to grow, but they reject them. They are shown the path to healing, but they turn away from it. Proverbs 29:01 warns us, "Whoever remains stiff-necked after many rebukes will suddenly be destroyed without remedy." This is the fate of those who refuse to change. They believe they can continue hurting others without consequence, but every action they take is planting a seed. Every lie, every betrayal, every moment of selfishness is writing a future they will one day have to live in. They ignore the warning signs, dismiss the wisdom of those around them, and believe that they can continue as they always have. But time does not wait for them, and neither does judgment. You have likely encountered people like this. You may have pleaded with them, reasoned with them, and tried to help them see the truth. You may have given them more chances than they deserved, hoping that this time they would finally open their eyes. But each time they proved that they were not interested in transformation. They were comfortable in their ways, blind to their faults, and unwilling to take responsibility for the pain they caused. The Bible speaks of Pharaoh, a man who refused to change even when faced with undeniable signs from God. Again and again, he was given opportunities to repent. Moses warned him. Plagues struck Egypt, yet each time Pharaoh hardened his heart. Exodus 8:15. He saw the destruction unfolding before him, but rather than surrender, he continued in his rebellion, and in the end his refusal to change led to his downfall. His kingdom suffered, his people suffered, and he himself was ruined, all because he refused to listen. This is the nature of those who reject growth. They are so committed to their ways that they ignore the damage they are doing to themselves and those around them. They see relationships fall apart. They see doors closing. They experience the consequences of their actions, yet instead of learning, they grow even more stubborn. They convince themselves that they are always right, that the world is against them, that it is others who need to change, not them. Proverbs 12:15 says, "The way of fools seems right to them, but the wise listen to advice." A wise person is willing to learn, willing to admit their faults, willing to correct their mistakes. But a fool will hold on to their pride even as it destroys them. They will hurt the people who love them, push away those who try to help them, and refuse to see that they are the cause of their own suffering. You may have watched as they blamed everyone but themselves. When they lost a friend, it was never their fault. When relationships crumbled, they painted themselves as the victim. When life didn't go their way, they claimed others had sabotaged them. They never once stopped to ask if their own actions played a role in the chaos surrounding them. They refused to see that their own behavior was the reason for their loneliness, their struggles, their broken connections. Romans 2:05 warns, "But because of your stubbornness and your unrepentant heart, you are storing up wrath against yourself for the day of God's wrath, when his righteous judgment will be revealed." Every choice has a consequence. Every refusal to change adds another layer to the destruction they are building for themselves. They may not see it now. They may continue living as though their actions carry no weight, but the truth is, no one can outrun the harvest of their own choices. A person who refuses to change is not just choosing stagnation, they are choosing self-destruction. They do not see it that way. Of course, they believe they are standing firm, staying true to themselves, resisting those who want to control them. But in reality, they are resisting growth. They are resisting wisdom. They are resisting the very opportunities that could save them from their own downfall. God does not force transformation upon anyone. He offers the path, but each person must choose to walk it. In Ezekiel 18:30, God says, "Repent, turn away from all your offenses, then sin will not be your downfall, But those who refuse to change hear these words and scoff. They believe they have nothing to repent for. They believe they are fine just as they are, and so they continue on their path, unaware that they are heading toward emptiness. You may have tried everything to help them. You may have prayed for them, guided them, extended grace beyond what was reasonable. But if a person refuses to change, nothing you say or do will make a difference. They have made their choice. They have chosen themselves over wisdom, pride over humility, stubbornness over transformation. And in the end they will live with the weight of that decision. Life has a way of revealing the true nature of people. It is in the moments of hardship, betrayal, and suffering that you see who was truly for you and who only pretended to be. You have encountered those who took without giving, who manipulated and deceived, who mocked your pain and abandoned you in your weakest moments. You have witnessed how they exploited your kindness, lived only for themselves, and refused to change even when given every opportunity. And now, as time unfolds, you will see the inevitable outcome of their choices. Galatians 6:7 declares, "Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. A man reaps what he sows." Though it may have seemed for a season that they escaped the consequences of their actions, though it may have looked as if they prospered while you suffered, know this: justice is never forgotten by God. The same people who walked away without a second thought will one day look back and realize what they lost. The same individuals who mocked your pain will find themselves in pain with no one to comfort them. Those who used and discarded you will discover that their own lives have become empty, void of the love, support, and peace they once took for granted. Proverbs 11:8 says, "The righteous is delivered from trouble, and it comes to the wicked instead." The very harm they inflicted upon you will return to them. The loneliness they left you in will become their own. The betrayal they dealt so carelessly will revisit them when they least expect it. And while their lives descend into regret, yours will rise into restoration. You may not see it immediately. The seeds of divine justice do not always sprout overnight. But know this: God is not blind to what was done to you. He saw every tear, heard every cry, and counted every time you were wronged. He allowed certain people to exit your life, not to punish you, but to protect you. The pain they caused was not the end of your story. It was a doorway to something greater. Job 42:10 reminds us, "After Job had prayed for his friends, the Lord restored his fortunes and gave him twice as much as he had before." What you lost will not only be restored but multiplied. The very trials that should have broken you are the ones that have strengthened you. While they wasted their time indulging in selfishness and cruelty, you were being prepared for something far greater. And now, as the years pass, you will see the difference between a life built on righteousness and a life built on deception. Your old age will be blessed, not because of luck, but because you endured with integrity. Your hands remained clean. Your heart, though wounded, remained pure. You did not let their actions turn you bitter, and because of that, God will honor you. Isaiah 40:31 assures us, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. You will rise, and they will watch as you do." The people who once looked down on you will see the favor of God upon your life, and in their emptiness, in their regret, they will finally understand they did not destroy you. They only removed themselves from the blessings God had in store for you. Your story is not over. The pain they caused is not your final chapter. What is coming for you is peace, joy, and restoration beyond what you imagined. Their future will be empty, but yours will be full. Stay faithful, stay strong, and trust that the God who saw your suffering is the same God who will bring your victory. Your old age will not be a time of regret, but a time of rejoicing.